The Girl from Mississippi. The wind rustled through the cotton fields of Kosciuszko, Mississippi, whispering secrets of forgotten dreams. In a small wooden house, barely held together by nails and prayer, a little girl named Oprah sat on the porch, legs dangling, eyes fixed on a sky that always seemed just out of reach. She was born into struggle, illegitimate, poor, and black in the segregated South of 1954. Her mother, Vernita, barely a teenager, handed her off to her grandmother, Hattie Mae, a woman of faith and stern silence. Hattie Mae scrubbed floors for pennies, cooked meals with scraps, and stitched Oprah's clothes from potato sacks. The children at church called her Sack Girl. Each name thrown at her stuck like a stone. But even then, Oprah had a voice. At just 3 years old, she recited Bible verses in front of congregations, her words thick with meaning far beyond her years. People said she was gifted. Some whispered she was cursed, too bold, too loud for a girl born in the shadows. Behind closed doors, the silence screamed louder. When Oprah was just 9, she returned to live with her mother in Milwaukee. The city had its own kind of cold, not the kind that nips your skin, but the kind that seeps into your soul. The apartment was small, crowded, unwatched, and that's when it began. The abuse came not from strangers, but from those she was told to trust, family members, men who took her innocence and left her with secrets too heavy for a child to carry. She didn't cry. She didn't speak. She simply withdrew, into books, into fantasy, into silence. At school, she pretended to be okay. She raised her hand, read aloud, smiled when asked to. But behind that smile was a war. Shame. Fear. A desperate need to be seen, not just looked at, but truly seen. By 14, she was pregnant. The baby died shortly after birth. And with it, something inside Oprah shattered, and something else, quietly, began to form. A voice. A knowing. A refusal. She looked in the mirror one day, eyes swollen from crying, hair tangled, chest aching, and whispered to her reflection, "This is not the end of me." She didn't know how or when, but she knew one thing with holy certainty. She would not be a footnote in her own story. In the stillness of her room, she picked up a broken hairbrush, held it like a microphone, and spoke into the air as if the world were listening. She imagined lights, applause, meaning, connection, not for fame, but for freedom. The wind outside carried her voice like a seed, and though the soil of her life had been rough, something was beginning to root. She just didn't know it yet. Escaping the shadows. The gray bus pulled away from Milwaukee with a groan, its windows reflecting the tired eyes of a teenage girl who had already lived lifetimes. Oprah sat alone, arms crossed tightly over her chest. Her mother had sent her away, again. But this time, there was no sadness. Only resolve. She was headed to Nashville, to live with her father, Vernon Winfrey, a man she barely knew. A barber by trade, a military man by discipline, he kept a bookshelf next to the dinner table and a curfew tighter than the laces in his boots. To Oprah, he was foreign, strict, unyielding. But beneath the rules, there was something she hadn't felt in years: structure. Vernon demanded academic excellence. Oprah gave it. He made her read books, write reports, speak with clarity. Slowly, her voice returned, not the frightened whisper from Milwaukee, but a voice shaped by thought, purpose, and precision. She entered speech contests and devoured literature. Her bedroom, once a sanctuary of silence, now echoed with lines from Shakespeare and Maya Angelou. But the world outside wasn't as eager to hear her. At 17, she won a scholarship to Tennessee State University, a historically black college. There, she studied communications, her voice no longer just a form of survival, but a skill. She began working at a local radio station, her deep, textured voice weaving through the airwaves. Listeners loved her. Executives tolerated her. Yet when she stepped into the television world, she didn't fit the mold. She was told her hair was too thick, her nose too wide, her emotions too raw. Other anchors read the news with flat precision. Oprah felt it. And that was a problem. At WJZ-TV in Baltimore, she was given the evening news desk, only to be quietly pushed off it. Too emotional, they said. Too intense. She cried in her car, gripping the steering wheel, questioning everything. Was her empathy a flaw? Was her honesty too heavy for a camera lens? They demoted her to a morning talk show, an assignment no one wanted. But on that couch, something clicked. She wasn't just reporting the world's tragedies, she was connecting to them. People leaned in when she spoke. She asked questions others avoided. She didn't wear a mask. And for the first time in her life, the very thing that once got her silenced, her emotion, became her edge. Behind the scenes, producers still doubted her. They called her lucky, unpolished. But Oprah began to understand something they didn't. Her power was in her presence. One night, after filming a segment on grief, she sat alone in the studio. The lights were off, the crew had left. She looked at her reflection in the blank monitor. "This is what I was born to do," she whispered, not as a boast, but as a truth finally uncovered. What others called weakness, she now carried like armor. And the world, whether it was ready or not, was about to see her rise. Becoming Oprah. Chicago was cold in the winter, but the studio lights were warm. And as Oprah stepped onto the set of AM Chicago, she wasn't afraid anymore. The talk show had been struggling. Low ratings, minimal buzz, a format trapped in mediocrity. Oprah wasn't the first choice to host it. But once she sat on that couch, microphone in hand, something shifted. She didn't deliver scripted lines. She listened. She laughed. She leaned into people's pain, not away from it. And the audience responded. Within months, AM Chicago rocketed to the top of the ratings, outpacing competitors who had more experience, more polish, more pedigree. The secret? Oprah wasn't trying to be anyone else. She was simply being Oprah, and for the first time in her life, that was more than enough. Her empathy, once labeled as weakness, became her superpower. She didn't flinch at messy truths. She asked the hard questions with softness. Survivors of abuse, people battling addiction, families torn by trauma, she gave them space to speak, and millions tuned in to listen. By 1986, the show was renamed The Oprah Winfrey Show and broadcast nationally. In a landscape dominated by male hosts and sanitized topics, Oprah built something different, a space where people could feel seen. But the spotlight came with shadows. Critics called her a confessional queen, accusing her of sensationalism. Others mocked her weight, her tears, her emotional openness. Some networks branded her brand of intimacy as unprofessional. Oprah never argued. She didn't need to. The work spoke louder than the whispers. In one unforgettable episode, a guest disclosed years of sexual abuse on live television. The studio fell silent. Oprah didn't blink. She leaned forward, voice steady, and said, "I understand." And she did. She always did. That authenticity made her a mirror. People didn't just watch Oprah, they found themselves in her. She launched Harpo Productions, becoming the first black woman to own and produce her own show. She controlled the narrative now, no longer just the talent, but the architect. She began adapting books, spotlighting voices, creating a media empire grounded in heart, healing, and truth. But power never clouded her memory. She remembered the potato sack dresses, the nights in silence, the babies she buried, the names she was called. And she carried them, not as burdens, but as bricks, building the platform she now stood upon. One evening, after a taping, she walked through the empty set, heels echoing off the studio walls. She paused at the audience seats, once filled with strangers, now turned believers. She smiled softly. "They said I was too much," she murmured. "Turns out, I was just enough." And as the camera lights dimmed, a new glow surrounded her, not of fame, but of purpose. She was no longer chasing the light. She had become it. The legacy of light. Years passed, but Oprah never stopped listening. Even as her name became synonymous with power, her mission remained rooted in something far older than fame, a deep yearning to heal. Not just herself, but others. In 2007, she stood at the gates of a dream come true, the Oprah Winfrey Leadership Academy for Girls in South Africa. It wasn't just a school, it was a sanctuary. For girls who looked like her, who came from the same broken soil, who needed someone to believe in them before the world told them they mattered. She didn't build a legacy in glass towers or stock portfolios. She built it in stories, in lives touched, in truths told.